and start recording the audio because, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome to the Hot Pole Position episode 14. We are getting there. It's going to be a good week. How are you, sir?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Busy.
Busy is
Yeah,
good.
just working at the moment, just flat out. I was up until 4:30 last night working, and then I was up at 7:30 to have a call with a client that didn't come because the client was hungover.
Oh, oof.
And then the gate people that were meant to come to install a new gate didn't turn up
Oh,
for an hour.
great. Brilliant.
So I appreciated getting up early for that. But then I did a good deed for the day. There was a guy walking past whose bicycle tire was flat, and he was on his way to a job interview. We didn't have a pump, so I gave him a lift to his job interview. So I feel I've done my good Samaritan work for the day. So
Yeah, good for
I
you.
can go. I can go to heaven now.
Yeah, I was up relatively late last night. Not that late, by the way. I'm drinking a Corona, by the way, if anyone's of legal drinking age and wants to join in. And it's the last Corona I've got, so I went and bought a lime earlier. Oh, that's tasty. And yeah, so I had a client on a Skype call last night, which, if anyone isn't already aware, that's something we do here at the studio. That he's someone who watched the channel a while back, had some really technical questions that were relatively niche about Reaper, and so we did a one-to-one Skype session, and I talked him through what his needs were and how we could address that and write it all down as a sequence of steps for him. And it was to do with complicated drum routing for virtual drums,
Hmm.
which, as a coincidence, this week I'm going to be filming for the new Reaper series, that episode refilmed. So I'll probably end up incorporating a bit of what we were talking about on that session into that, because there are questions that come up when people ask you these questions that you're like, I didn't think of that before, or at least, it's relevant to the right people. So yeah, it's been a busy one.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Absolutely. And also I've been kind of working a little bit on the live sound front. I've got a new mixing desk in, and a new, which I may have mentioned last week, and a new streaming computer in at the venue that I work at.
Hmm.
So I think I'm going to start with a Logitech webcam, try using OBS because I get a live feed out of the desk now,
All right.
because I'm using an Allen and Heath Z desk, which has a USB output, which
Ah.
can send the mix straight to the streaming software. Or at the moment, I've been using Voice Meter Banana and recording MP3s for bands over the last few days, which has been really quite nice. It's an extra something for them because it's no extra effort for us.
Hmm.
But if I get OBS running and do a local recording of the webcam plus the board mix, then I'm starting to think about things like the webcam does have like ambient audio capture. If I can blend that in at a lower level with the actual desk mix so it sounds live, so that, when the audience claps, we actually hear the audience, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
then we've got a pretty decent system going on there.
Yeah.
And then from there, if the next logical step is to set up the OBS to stream on that venue's Facebook page, and then before you know it, with minimal extra effort, I've then transformed a venue from somewhere that you hear about and you're not sure whether it's good or not to somewhere that's live every weekend,
I like
transmitting
it.
to the wider world, and also, knock on effect of them potentially bringing in customers because they've seen bands there, even without being able to go.
Hmm.
Because I don't know what your thought is on that, but my thought has always been, if you can't make it to a gig, it's really good to see a live stream of a band. And I don't think it's ever going to stop anyone from going, because it's like, oh, I can just watch it at home anyway. Because if you weren't going to
Yeah.
go, you weren't going to go.
I think it'd be down to the bands. I think I don't know. It kind of it's difficult with small venues. I mean, what sort of say like not even some of the venues in Manchester. You can imagine. Remember when we used to have the label and we had all the young bands that were essentially being forced by promoters to get people to come to their gigs,
Mm.
and it was the same friends coming to the same gigs every time, and that's how loads of bands had to start out. Those friends aren't going to come if they can watch it on Facebook because they're going to say, "Oh, I'll just watch the stream." But on the same level, they're not really. It's not really generating fans that way. That's just really taking advantage of young bands. So.
Yeah. The venue that I'm doing the live sound for is a little bit different. The bands generally are covers bands. There's no payment for entry. So the idea is the band
Is
is
there any
there.
rights issues then if they're doing covers of other people's songs? Are you able to stream it?
Oh, well, there's a bigger question, but I think it's one of those things where if you live streaming it and if you don't keep the video playback, then
I don't know.
yeah, I'll have to have a look,
Yeah, I don't know.
see what's going on. But I'm sure it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. But we'll find out, and I'll have a look because I think that whole thing's quite interesting, and definitely I already have the hardware to do local recording, to give to bands or whoever to just go, hey, this is a thing. But if we can make that a live broadcast, why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
be very cool.
Do live broadcasts from my home studio and live stream at $2,000 tickets for 10 people. Yeah. Get Metallica to just do a show from my studio for 10 clients, 10 customers.
I'm in.
Yeah. Oh, right. So, I know that's working fine, so I'm going to close that down for the time being. Let's talk about some news this week. The news. So,
news, everybody.
Let's start with a few articles from Music Radar. So, last week we talked about a kind of sample accurate Sega Mega Drive, Sega Genesis plugin. So this week we've got one from Retro Bytes, which does NES and Commodore 64 sounds. So yes, that got announced. Maybe it was hot on the heels to try and capitalize on that. Maybe it's just coincidence. But yeah, the fact that you can now choose to use the NES square waves, Commodore SID chip sounds, that kind of thing. That I think that's pretty cool because that means that I can make chip tunes that sound pretty authentic without having to leave the comfort of the DAW that I know. Because I know there are guys who do like bleepy bloopy bleepy music actually on the original hardware, and I think that's really impressive.
It's cool.
But there's so much effort involved. I would be so far out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
That it would just put me off doing it because, unfortunately, not being 16 and in high school or whatever and having hours to just do stuff until it's right, I kind of don't have the time to do that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so having something like this, I know the sounds of the NES, I know the sounds of the Commodore 64. If I've got one in my mind and I can pull up a VST and go, this sound hit the knobs at this setting, let's go, then yeah. That's exactly the kind of thing I would be interested in, and it's $19. And I think, yeah, if you want those kind of sounds, $19, that's peanuts.
Yeah.
So,
no,
yeah.
Definitely.
Right, moving on. Brainworks. We talked a few weeks ago about the Plugin Alliance going to a subscription model. Because subscription models are pretty much where it's at, and Plugin Alliance are one of the big boys in the audio plugin industry now, because a lot of the little guys have all banded together to become this thing, the Plugin Alliance. And I just wanted to say that one of the first plugins that they've announced now that monthly subscription thing is out is an emulation of a Diesel amp, the Diesel Herbert, and I played a little sample. In fact, I'm just going to play it on stream. Yeah, just playing a little bit there. And if isn't processed afterwards, if that's just how it sounds, that's amazing. Because it just sounds huge. And yeah, I'm probably going to try and check this out. Because even though I've got heavy amps, I've got heavy stuff, you know, diesel amps are kind of a world unto themselves with a certain clarity about them, even though they sound really, really heavy, where a lot of heavy amps, you do anything complicated and suddenly it kind of turns to mush.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best examples I can think of the use of a diesel amp is Muse, the Absolution album. That's all just diesel. Stuff
really?
Stuff like Stockholm Syndrome, which is that really heavy, fuzzy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all diesel. The producer turned up to the studio with a diesel amp under his arm and said, "Matt Bellamy, you are using this." And it just sounds amazing. 'Cause, yeah, diesels don't have to necessarily do metal, but when they do heavy, they do a really nice heavy that's not necessarily searing and just doesn't make your ears bleed. It just makes your head bob. A lot of the kind of progressive bands and a lot of the technical bands use diesel amps as well, not because they're more gainy or anything than other amps, but because there's a certain clarity, and it's quite hard to describe, where you can do really technical stuff and it sounds brutal, but it doesn't just sound like a fizzy kind of mush.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I thought, okay. Yeah, if you're going to do a diesel amp, you're either going to just make noise or it's going to sound like the real deal. And I was really quite impressed with this Brainworks version. So, yeah. Apparently it was $149 for the plugin, or if I remember rightly, the Plugin Alliance bundle was $25 a month.
So how many different companies are involved in that?
Quite a few. So Brainworks are one of the leaders that are involved in the Plugin Alliance. Let's have a look. So if I just quickly go on to have a look. ADA, who used to make classic hardware units, Ampeg, they're officially licensed. Who else? We got Brainworks, we got Shadow Hills, we got Purple Audio, we got Lindell Audio. SPL, who makes some great hardware. So there's loads of different companies. In fact, this list just goes on and on and on and on and on.
I mean, it's pretty cool that companies have all got together to do that.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where I think they've all worked out that if you're going to be the little guy in this industry, you're not going to get very far.
Mm-hmm.
But if you band together and become the big boys...
Yeah. No, I like it.
Yeah, $25 monthly. So I think at some point, probably later this year, I'm going to get a couple of months of this bundle, check it all out, do a few videos on what's available there. Because, I've got the Slate bundle already, which I really swear by. But a lot of what this does is not what the Slate bundle does.
Alright.
There's a lot of stuff like vintage Ampeg amps and the Diesel VH4, which is the amp, and now the Herbert, they're there. There's certain plugins that come from Plugin Alliance that are just slightly different enough that they could coexist and both be used and not just be... There are some plugins where, like, Slate Digital have an SSL EQ and so do Plugin Alliance, that kind of thing, where there is some overlap. That's going to happen because there's only so much well-known, well-respected hardware out there.
Mm-hmm.
But this list, there's stuff that makes me go, oh, I could use that. Like there's an EQ, if I remember rightly, in here where depending on what sound you give it, it can change itself dynamically and it can change pans and things like that. I thought
We talked about this a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like you weren't too sure about that sort of stuff then, though.
No, and it's not the kind of thing that I would use on a day-to-day basis. But if I was to pay $25 a month and have like 200 plugins and it was one of them, I'd probably give it a shot in certain places. That's what I mean, where there is overlap, but the other stuff, I would probably be a bit more prepared to use it if I had it anyway. But
right, okay.
Yeah, it's not the kind of thing that I go to by default, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's the orange distortion there. They've got a DS1 emulation, of course they have. Yeah. But yeah, there's all sorts of interesting little bits in there that I've been on the fence about for years. But if I could try it all for a very, very reasonable price, I'd probably give it a go. Whereas if I was paying $150 per plugin and I didn't like it, I would be rather upset. Yeah.
I can understand.
And I've always been reticent to use demos, versions of software, because of what I do, which is working on other people's projects. If I get a recall a month down the line, and the demo of a plugin I've been using's run out, what do I do? And then so the answer to that is, well, make some time to play around with stuff, get the demo version, play around with it, and that's cool and all. But again, it comes back to the old thing of finding time.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas something like a monthly subscription, if I get a couple of months of it and then decide not too fussed, but then a couple of months down the line I need to make a recall, I can give these guys another $25. I have access to all of it for that month.
Yeah, exactly.
Do what I need to do. Yeah. So, yeah, it's all about context, and that's, yeah, the deal for me with monthly plugin bundles. If you can stop them and then start them at any time, that's a big selling point for me, because if I decide like I said, I want a few, and then later on I want to use it again, it's not gonna break my bank. And that's pretty important. Anyway,
Yeah, definitely.
moving on.
Subscription service is the way forward for everything.
Yeah, it's really gone that way. Even Waves are trying to do a subscription service. They've massively overpriced it and screwed it, but they're trying. They'll probably change that pricing at some point. But yeah, so I saw this and thought this was really funny. There's a Beatbox made out of cardboard. And yeah, it's going to be on Kickstarter, which means you'll either never get one or you'll get one in a few years. But the idea is funny.
As long as it doesn't rain.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't take it out and play it at a festival because it'll just dissolve. But it looks like it's got proper arcade style buttons in it. So instead of playing Street Fighter, if you want to make a drum beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got little speakers in the back and everything. Yeah, you can just about see. I'm going to mute. Yeah, make sure this is muted and see if I can get an angle of it. No, there's no angle on there. Even though the thumbnail for the article had a different image of it. That's kind of annoying. But yeah, so I thought this thing was pretty cool. Let's see how it sounds. Yeah, so it's got that kind of deep boom boosh type thing, which I don't know where the article's gone. I searched one which was the Behringer RD8. We seem to be talking about Behringer a lot recently.
Yeah, almost every week.
Yeah, they're really on fire at the moment. So I'm going to send you the link to this. This is what I found. So, Mr. Behringer is a keyboard nut, and he's finally releasing everything. So, the 808 drum machine.
Oh, right.
Everybody knows the 808, right?
Yeah.
It's got it's got a variety of sounds from like Run DMC all the way through pretty much all modern hip hop and rap. Mm-hmm. Everything is using a Roland 808 or a software version of it. Mm-hmm. And that picture right there, that's a Behringer version of the old hardware 808. It's actual analog hardware like the real 808, but it's got MIDI inbuilt as well because, of course, it has, because it's Behringer. It's got USB inbuilt because it's Behringer. And where a real one, at the time, I think would have cost you the best part of £1,000. And if you could find one recently, good luck, and God knows how much you'd pay. $299 for one of them.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn good.
Yeah, and they're so good for like hip hop and R&B because, yeah, and the birth of house music, as Martin says in the chat, quite right. Mm-hmm. because you've got like a 16-part sequencer inbuilt. You can tune your separate drums, and you can program them all bit by bit, and it's really quite simple to do. So that when you're done, you hit play, and it goes in whatever way that you've programmed it, velocity and everything. No computers needed.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. $300, like a proper 808.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it?
That is mentally
They're
cool.
not small either. I mean, look at that person's hands. They're a real 808. They're really quite a large desktop unit.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
So they're massive. I don't know why. It's really weird. I've never actually contemplated what an 808 looks like before. It's just because I've only ever dealt with it, obviously, in the software version.
Right. I always thought they were a little smaller because I've worked with 303s before, which are the base module. And they are quite small. A 303 is, yeah, the basically acid house bass, all that. Yeah, that's a 303. And you would sync the two together using a sequencer, and that's basically house music. And then you put some cheesy keys over the top. Ooh, someone just subscribed. Awesome. But yeah, how about that? $299. They are killing it right now.
Yeah, it's cool what they're doing. Is it good business? Are people buying them? That'll be the next thing to see the next quarter.
Oh, they'll fly out the door. I'm confident on that. Considering that people like Roland either aren't making them at all, or if they are making reissues, it's so expensive to make them properly, they're probably going to be pricing themselves out of most people's price ranges.
Yeah, definitely.
So, let's move on from audio for a minute to our usual tech. Last week, AMD released their new version of their Epic processors. This is on a tangent to this news article. And apparently they are absolutely wiping the floor with everything. The new Epic processors, they're in the same size package as Threadripper. They're not too different from each other, but they're different market segments. And the top of the range Epic processor was 64 core, 128 thread. And it broke. I think they said it broke 80 records in the first week. They had it at a big presentation in Taiwan, and yeah, in that week they were testing it on the show floor, and broke 80 different performance records that Intel had with their top of the line server chips.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
The other thing that really interested me with that is that they said usually when you announce a new product, you just announce it, but the server stuff behind the scenes, they've been working with Facebook, HP, Dell, people like that, and getting the new Epic servers into racks and actually working and out there before the release. So they've now got proven customers, big name customers, track record, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's the kind of thing where, I mean, the top of the range 64 core was something like $6,700, which sounds like a stupid amount, but the top of the range the top of the range Intel 28 core server processor was $12,000. And for these data centers, the amount of money is largely irrelevant. It's how much processing can you squeeze into one little machine over and over and over and over, so you can fit it all in one data center building. And then it will pay for itself very quickly, apparently. So for them, it's a whole different game. And that's with 8-channel memory and just ridiculous specs. Something that they had on the Epic, which I'm guessing is going over to the Threadripper as well, was hardware encrypted CPU to RAM communication.
Ooh.
Yeah, at a hardware level, it was called SEV. I can't remember what that stood for. It was Secure Encrypted Volatile Memory, maybe? Which meant that even if you could hack into a server's system, hack into the VMware, then start listening for packets and trying to check through to the memory, even if you check through memory leaks, you would get nothing, because the answer you would get would be scrambled.
Mm.
because the RAM itself is hardware encrypted, which also means 0 performance penalty.
That's that
That's
could
a
be a
big
game
one.
changer for some people. I mean, especially given the
The Meltdown
was
Inspector.
the kernel issue that Windows had. Was it last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all the Intel processors had the issue where their management engine, which is their like backdoor into the top level of the hardware.
Oh, so I meant Intel, not Windows. Yeah.
Right, yeah. But yeah, so you could literally just log in and just ask for anything.
Yeah. There's like you could literally get to straight into say your Chrome passwords through there. It's
Yeah.
like I spent about 6 hours I think this week remanaging all my passwords after my GTA account got hacked.
Oh.
It turns out it wasn't Adobe, it was someone else. Basically, Rockstar had all their accounts compromised due to a leak from someone else.
Hmm.
So like they didn't actually get hacked. They just found that unluckily a lot of people had their Rockstar accounts were the same as say their whatever else this app was. I can't remember what it was.
Ah.
Wasn't anything. So yes, so I got an email the day before the wedding from Rockstar that I just ignored because it was in Polish and
Oh.
we were like busy trying to sort the wedding out. And I got back and I was like, I might play a bit of GTA. I haven't played it in like a year.
Hmm.
And turns out that my account didn't exist anymore.
Oh.
But went through support, took about a week and a half, but I got the account back. But that made me think, you know what? I need to make sure everything has two-factor and or have unique passwords. So I installed a password manager, which from I know it's music related, but like from a security point of view, makes you think, what if you were to lose access using a hard drive? We've talked about before about backing things up,
Yeah.
but losing access to stuff,
Hmm.
regardless of your backup, is like it's pretty big. I've gone to a password manager. So for the first time ever, I've now deleted 10 years worth of passwords out of Chrome.
Wow.
That was terrifying.
Hmm.
But a interesting experience. But yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
security is because people are just constantly trying to break into everything these days.
Well,
Like
absolutely.
constantly under attack.
And there are so many tech-savvy people from the age of like 10 upwards.
Yeah, unless you've got an air gap studio, I think I definitely recommend making sure that you don't overlook. Because what really hit home is when I got the password manager and it told me that I had 515 accounts with the same password.
Wow. It's so
I was
easily
like,
done, though, isn't it?
yeah, I was like, you kidding me? I don't have 550 online accounts. Yeah, apparently I do. I have more than that. And it was brilliant though, because it also told you all the ones that were unsafe, and then for any major sites, it would just log in for you. You could just hit a button, and it would just change all the passwords.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. Might have to get on that.
I think it was like £16 or something. I tried a Dash Lane.
Right.
Called. Oh no, no, it's a free version.
Yeah.
Not paying anything for it.
Cool. But now they have all your passwords.
Yes, but they're all encrypted, and it requires a master password to get into it. So it feels like, yeah.
Cool.
You can also even set it with keys and stuff as well, so that you've like SSH style. So your machine has to have a secret key on it, and two-factor. Like you can go full on like extreme into the password manager if you want to.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about the tech behind all this, so the new 3000 series Ryzen are out, but the new 3000 series Threadripper aren't out yet. But there's been a benchmark CPU leak with basically the 32 core processor for the more consumery end of the market, which is probably more like the £1,000 or like £800 or £900 mark, I guess, rather than the 6,000 or 7,000 mark, which is way beyond even the most CPU crazy, like, normal person. It's like, even if in the studio we decided that we were going to try and be Hans Zimmer, we wouldn't need like an Epic server, because that's just not what they're not for that.
No.
But the Threadripper's like, yeah, the In terms of gamers, it's ridiculous as well because it's kind of too far advanced for a gamer in terms of number of cores. But it's not. The other thing with something like an Epic processor is you get 24/7 service, and if it breaks, they like sort you out with a new one the next day. Whereas something like Threadripper, it's for the kind of people who aren't going to be abusing them like that, maybe. Anyway, yeah. So the initial, if this is real, it's come out that it's going to be 15% faster, which is like, oh, whoop-de-doo. But apparently, of course, it's got PCI Express 4 support, which means that you'll have something like 64 PCI Express 4 lanes. I can't even think how you would saturate that. Like, even as a video producer, let alone an audio producer, you work on 8K video, you've got 16 PCI Express lane ultra fast storage. You can't even saturate that.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that just makes the head hurt. I mean, you could probably switch to like completely CPU based rendering and still be faster than somebody else who's using graphics card stuff.
Wow. That's pretty mental.
Yeah. Or, I mean, the use case I can think of for something like a 32 core machine is someone who is a relatively independent animator, someone who does like 3D work, where you could have that running on lots and lots of cores, but then take that straight into something like Premiere or After Effects and then be back out and have all the programs running at the same time. And because you've got that many cores and that many threads, they're not treading on each other's toes. Which means, that's the kind of thing outside of server land that I can think of for... I mean, I couldn't use 32 cores for anything. I mean, if I had money, no objects, I'd probably get the 16 core new Threadripper because there's something to do with memory access as well, with RAM access. When you go above 16 cores, some of the cores can't directly access the RAM, which is fine for big workloads because they just kind of wait and then find a way round and get big chunks of data. But for audio, you need the data to get to the CPU now, which means that little delay there is where you get all your pops and clicks and all your issues with latency and all that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah, okay.
So, but the 16 core, if this 32 core's performance is anything to go by, is going to be an absolute monster. I could run 96 kilohertz mixes with everything on every channel ever and be pretty much guaranteed that it's never going to give me any problems.
Or you could run like, 6 Chrome windows?
7 if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. I'm having to close each one of these tabs as we go to try and free up resources.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, it's one of those things. Right, so, something that's a little different for this show is, have you heard about the new cryptocurrency from Facebook, Libre?
Very minimally.
Yeah, so I've done a little reading on it. And here's the thing. It's a cryptocurrency, yes. It's not decentralized. Basically, Facebook and all the major companies are going to own the servers, basically.
Okay.
Which means that it's somewhere in between, so yes, they're going to own it, and that kind of takes the point away a little bit. But also, something that surprised me in this article from Wired. So, Bitcoin can only do about 7 payments a second, which when you think globally, that's really slow. What surprised me is Visa...
What? Bitcoin as a whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's why it now takes about 15 minutes for your transactions to go through. It's getting really slow. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But Visa can do about 24,000 payments a second, which
Okay.
I didn't think sounded like that much, but then when you work out that's every second,
Mhm.
that's actually pretty fast.
Yeah, definitely.
Even worldwide, I mean, I've had it with card machines where I've been using card machines before and it's taken a couple of seconds to go through. That was
Yeah.
probably in a queue of 40,000 transactions.
Yeah, I always just thought it was the connection between the shop and the endpoint, but
Well, that'll be a large part of it, sure.
yeah.
But then, especially places like if you go to Walmart or Asda, which is the same company in our country, they've got like fiber optic broadband that all the card machines have to go through. So that delay that used to be where it dial up or whatever is gone now. Sometimes it'll be beep done, and sometimes it'll be beep 2, 3, 4, 5 done.
Mhm.
And maybe that's it. That like you're in a queue of 100,000 payments, and it still just goes ding 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 done, because that's stupid fast. But apparently Libre should be able to do about 1,000 transactions per second, which is more than 100 times faster than Bitcoin.
Mm.
And it's one of those things where I don't know how this is going to go, whether it's going to end up huge or not. I can't see why it would, because people will look at it and go, why should I pay for things in your coin when I've got my own cash?
Yeah, I don't think people trust Facebook enough to do that at the moment. Like, not the sorts of people that are going to deal in crypto. I
Well,
don't think they're in the right place to
yeah, but
find that.
that's the thing. I think this is for a different audience. I think they're not going to use the word cryptocurrency at all. This is going to be for all the 16 to 18-year-olds who want to buy something and they're on Facebook.
Are they on Facebook? I thought they were all on Instagram these days. Oh, they probably put it into Instagram though. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, who owns
Yeah. Okay,
Instagram?
if it's an Instagram currency, then yeah, or all them influencers going to be asking. That's what they'll do. They'll say they'll make it so you can kind of subscribe to an Instagram account by using their currency,
Yeah,
and then
yo Venmo
the
me $5.
influencers, yeah, the influencers will they'll be pimp themselves out for Facebook's own money rather than oh my god. Oh my god, I'm not even going to go into the rest of it. Holy shit. So that's an awful world I don't want to live in.
Yeah, welcome to the real Orwellian nightmare.
Yeah, God.
Oy. So, what do central banks
That's
think
how you
about
deal with not
Libra?
paying taxes, isn't it? Not get paid.
Yeah, that's it. If they go, well, we only took this amount of money, and
We only
then
deal in our own currency.
yeah,
Fucking hell. Oh, that's the life. To get to the size where you're so big, you're like, screw the rest of you with your money. You're paying in my money now, bitch.
yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah.
France apparently has spoken out and underlined that only governments can mint money, and has warned against Libra's potentially nefarious uses. Apparently, the Bank of England have said that Libra will have to meet very high financial standards to be allowed in the UK. But then, the first step is just getting people to use it, because like Xbox currency, Xbox credits, for instance, that's not a currency, and so it's not regulated. Much in the same way that this initially won't be.
Yeah.
But when it gets to a worth where people are giving Facebook and the other companies that run Libra, because they're not the only ones involved, billions, and that's what's going to happen. So apparently some of the members of the association are PayPal and Uber.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll be able to pay for Uber through Facebook money. That's a little bit terrifying.
So
Yeah.
it's not just pay in my money; it's pay in my friend's money.
Yeah.
Like me and the boys have got our own currency.
So, from the sublime to the ridiculous. In fact, no, I'm going to leave the one from Forbes to the end, because that's our and finally. So, sound on sound. Let's talk about Antelope Audio. They've released a whole load of new interfaces this month, and I don't like it. They
Okay.
make some really good sounding hardware. Apparently, they've had some real customer service nightmares, and I've seen some stories of them being not great to deal with. Although I've not had any personal experience with them, so that may just be the vocal minority. So I'm going to give them a bit of benefit of the doubt there. But their interfaces now have FPGA chips and a lot of onboard DSP to do a lot of onboard processing, and that's the bit I don't like.
That's a lot of acronyms you just threw right at me.
Sorry. FPGA, Field Programmable Grid Array, is kind of like a little CPU that you can update and change so that it does things in hardware, but you can completely change the way it works.
Okay.
And onboard DSP, onboard signal processing. So
Yeah.
without using a conventional CPU, you can have chips that basically do sound processing or video processing or whatever specific thing you want them to do, generally much more power efficiently than something like an Intel CPU, because that's what they're designed to do and they don't do anything else. That's why you get a lot of classic rack effects units that are digital, and you can't quite get the sound that they can get, even though their amount of processing power is relatively low. The chips in it are designed to do that thing and only that thing. So they do it well. And trying to do that in software on a computer using like an Intel processor is kind of hard, because then you've got to get this processor that was designed to do a little bit of everything and make it pretend to do just this one thing really well. But the reason I don't like interfaces with onboard DSP is that they've got all these great sounds they can make, but then if you want to come back to it later, you've then got to still have one of these.
Yeah.
And or if I take that project anywhere, I can't do anything because I don't have this specifically with me. And if I want to buy more plugins or more things that this thing can do, I have to then go to Antelope, who then have a captive market, don't have any incentive to ever put a sale on.
Right. Yeah.
Which is exactly the same thing that happens to Universal Audio with the UAD cards. They've been a thing for 10, 15 years or more. I still refuse to buy them because no matter how good they can sound, I will refuse to be trapped into an ecosystem like that where they can say, well, our plugins are like $300. If you didn't want them, you shouldn't have bought the hardware. So, yeah, no, thanks. And I'm not lugging around some extra hardware that I've then spent more money on to be able to work remotely with it. Where I use everything native, which means it works basically on a regular processor. And I've been that way as long as I can remember, because I can then open up a project on another computer, install those programs, maybe go through a bit of licensing hoopla, and if the processor's powerful enough to handle all of what I want it to do, then no problem. It just works, and I didn't need any extra stuff. And that's always been my philosophy. So even though Antelope stuff is probably high quality, no. So yeah, cool. And Kali Audio. This one made me a little sad, but I can understand it. So Kali Audio make these really quite affordable monitor speakers. The LP6s. These things. And at time of release, let's see what the price was. Yeah, £320 a pair.
Right.
For these studio monitors, which by all accounts are really quite good. Which is a third of the price that we would have been paying at the time for those Adam A7Xs that we use.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, the A7Xs are better, but they're maybe not that price difference better, but that's just 10 years of market change, product availability, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. Cool. But Kali Audio have now announced that for £99 or $99, you can get a Bluetooth input module, so you can use your phone through your monitors via Bluetooth. Ugh. So you're spending all this money on these really good monitors so you can get really good sound, and you want to listen to your phone.
Yeah?
Sure, I guess.
That's what I want.
I mean,
Hey, remember when we laughed when they added the export to Facebook button to Final Cut?
yeah, and that never made it right. Yeah. This is the hardware equivalent of the export to Facebook button in Final Cut. Yeah. So you can get Bluetooth receivers for a third of this price that would plug into those monitors anyway.
Yeah.
They don't have a big glowing blue light in them. Yeah. On a related note, I've been trying to edit about 5 different videos this week. So yeah, if you've been looking at the channel and not seen any videos up this week, apologies. They're all kind of stacking up, and there's so much being filmed and is almost finished with editing that by next week it's going to be an avalanche of videos. So if you're a patron on Patreon, or if you would like to be, come Monday you will suddenly start seeing video, because they're all 90% there. I just need to do a few, I need to go back into the studio at some point tomorrow and do a few little close-up shots, drop them into some of these videos, and then just hit export.
Nice.
So yeah, it's one of those things where it's slightly frustrating that everything's nearly ready, but it is nearly ready. So yeah, there've been little technical hitches and glitches trying to get some of these videos done, but they are now all done. Largely. So yeah, I've got to do that. Hit export, hit upload, ladies and gentlemen, all the video. So, yes. And finally, this one made me laugh so much. I don't know if you've seen this one. That there was a guy who is a security researcher, which is the polite way of saying a hacker who gets paid. So the state that he lives in California. He got a custom number plate, which you can do in California quite well, and it's spelled Null, which is null.
Yeah.
Which is a real kind of funny joke in between programmers, because null means, nothing, there's nothing there, doesn't exist, and I suppose he was wondering if that would break their system.
Yeah, they'd have to if they're storing the things not as a string when they scan them, then they've got other problems. But yeah.
Yeah, but it turns out it did make a problem.
Oh God, you're kidding me.
Not initially.
Right.
The problem was this. So he got the vanity plate Null, and within a week, his physical actual home mailbox was full of letters from the DMV with parking fines. Because apparently in California...
Oh, they can't scan them.
Yeah, if they couldn't scan someone's number plate when they were calling it in, or if they...
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay, that actually does make sense.
Yeah, so if they'd been putting in a police report for a car, maybe some burnt out car or something that didn't have any license plates on it, they just wouldn't put a license plate in. So the value would be returned to the server as null. And so, yeah.
But it's not that. Like, it'll get returned as null, not as the word null.
Well, apparently it's just not been picked up before.
But that means that whoever's written the program hasn't written anything in to catch what happens when it exceptions. Like, there's no exception handling. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So this guy, in the space of 2 weeks, apparently has had something like $20,000 worth of fines come through his door, addressed to someone with a null license plate. Jesus. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. Yeah. Which does actually ask the question, if he ever did anything nefarious, would they ever catch him? Because if they try and search in the database for null...
It'll come up with loads of different people. Oh, loads of different...
yeah, it'll come up with everything ever. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, what if your surname was Null? I'm almost tempted to change my last name by default to Null. So that when you start searching for me in databases... I mean, a lot of systems will be secure enough that that's not a problem, but you'll find one or two somewhere that aren't properly sanitized, that aren't properly processed.
Oh, yeah. That is just hilarious.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So that's the one that really made me laugh this week.
Mm.
Yeah, so we've kind of raced through that. Shall we do questions from the chat if anyone's got any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will have to go at some point this afternoon because I am roasting a beef. How English is that, ladies and gentlemen? I am literally roasting a beef as we speak. Something
Nice.
that I do because I'm a studio guy and because I do a lot of live sound. I work a lot of nights and odd hours. So what I do is every few weeks or so, I get some large lump of meat, whether it be beef, chicken, whatever, and a load of pasta or rice or something, a load of frozen vegetables, and I just make a ton of meals. At the start of the year, we invested in a fairly large freezer so that I can do that, prep like 20, 30 meals, whatever I can get out of a large hunk of meat and some carbs and vegetables, and freeze it all down. And then every time I've got to go out the house and it's not a reasonable time to be sitting down for dinner or whatever, I can just reach in the freezer, one of them, yoink, off I go. Find a microwave and a fork somewhere and I'm good. And I'm not having to eat fast food junk and spend all that money on fast food junk.
Yeah.
Because I tried that for a while and then my bank account was very empty and I suddenly felt rather ill.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I do things like this where I just get like a £5 beef or a £6 beef. And because another backstory part of my story is that before I started working with Liam at the media company, and then again fairly recently, I was a chef. So I've been doing this a while. I kind of know how to cook a beef. So yeah. People say, "Oh, don't you get sick of eating the same thing?" And I'm like, "It's only for a few weeks, and if I've cooked it right, so it's damn tasty. It's damn tasty every time."
Yeah.
Any advice for components for building a computer to run as a DAW and for video editing? Talking specific components. Well, it depends on your budget. I mean, generally speaking, now, if you've got even a semi-reasonable budget, the computer should do exactly what you need it to do. The more budget you've got, the sooner it will complete it. But beyond that, you shouldn't be having too many problems with anything that's like a quad-core processor and up. The AMD Ryzen stuff is now great. The Intel stuff is as good as it always was. If you need it to do video as well, you do need a dedicated graphics card. And I would be looking at something like a GeForce 1160 or something like that. At the studio, I'm using a 1050 Ti for that. In my laptop, I'm looking... what do I use? I actually use an old AMD ARM 7290, which does the job perfectly well. Budget's around $3,000. Woof. You don't need to spend that much money. If you want to, great. Motherboard wise, I'm a big fan of Asus now because they've not steered me wrong in years. I'd probably be looking, if you've got that much money, at something like a 9700K or even a 9900K if you're feeling flush, because that's the 8-core Intel unit with an Asus motherboard that's compatible with that. Can't think off the top of my head. And yeah, if you've got that kind of budget, I'd be looking at maybe a 2070 Super as the graphics card. Because have you seen the Super graphics cards?
The Super?
Yeah, so now there's a 2060 Super, a 2070 Super.
No.
Yeah, so what Nvidia decided to do, because AMD came out with a Navi, which is the new graphics card, and Nvidia kind of crapped themselves a little bit, they decided to do this thing where it's all a bit of a marketing lie, but it's not, where like the 2070 Super is a 2080 board, but where one or two small parts of it have like not passed the checks. So they disable the bits that haven't passed the check, call it a 2070 Super, and price it down accordingly to the next price bracket.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the 2080 Super is a 2080 Ti with a couple of little bits disabled. And so, yeah. And the 2060 Super, I believe, is a new SKU that was a 2070, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, power supply, get a good one. Storage, get yourself a nice NVMe drive, something like a Samsung 970 Evo. Maybe a terabyte drive for that for your startup drive. And then a couple of SSDs, just regular, maybe SanDisk or Samsung SATA SSDs I would get for audio would be fine. Maybe put them in RAID 1 for safety. Unless you're doing 8K footage, you don't need another NVMe drive for the footage. That's just extra money you don't have to spend. But yeah, so those graphics cards, they're... in fact, I'm just going to look at GeForce 2080 or 2070 Super. I'm just going to pull us back up to this. Yeah, so it is pretty much as I described. So like that's the easiest way to describe it is, yeah, it's taking the model above's board and just taking it down. But this is where months ago I said I thought that the price was wrong on the new 2070, 2080. They were priced a category up, in my opinion, where compared to the price of like a 1070, when you got to the 2070, that was the price of what I thought a 2080 should have cost.
Yeah.
So now they've literally just taken that board from the 2080, made that the 2070, stuck the word super after it, so it's a little little slower than the 2080 because they've disabled a couple of parts of the processor that failed to check.
Yeah.
And boom. Yeah. With large files, use a local NAS for backup. I prefer to do it old school. I actually get separate spinning hard drives, plug them in physically, copy stuff to them, unplug them again, put them away safely because then they're not constantly spinning. But then that's my way of doing that. And then I'll do that twice on 2 separate drives and put them in different places. The old thing, if data's not there in triplicate, it doesn't exist. Because then when a drive fails or something like that, you've still got a physical backup.
Yep. Been there recently.
Yeah. I found recently that my partner Mickey, she's an artist, she had a few Photoshop files on her laptop, because that's what she does. Turns out it was over 90 gigabytes that she hadn't backed up yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we copied that over to an external hard drive, and then moved the folder into Dropbox, so it would all be uploaded, so that... Yeah, that was all good. And then I was a complete idiot and pressed the wrong button on my Dropbox account, and that folder went missing.
Oh no.
Now, because we'd already put it all on an external hard drive, we were already covered. And luckily there is a restore button in Dropbox to just magically make it come back.
Yeah.
But even if that wasn't the case, we'd already backed it up. So if that was really, really bad, we could go, oh, well, okay, we've already got it on a drive here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So always back everything up because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially video work, because video files are big.
Yeah, and it only takes one little bit to be corrupted.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Yeah, if you've got like a 40 gigabyte video file and in the middle of it there's a small corruption, that entire file's useless.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
we've learnt this.
Yeah, especially when we were on a shoot out in where were we?
In Andorra?
Yeah.
In the Andorran mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an experience. Because there was no way to back it up at that point though, because the cameras only took one card, so you couldn't record it twice.
Yeah, that's been a nice advancement recently, is cameras that can do dual storage. Yeah. Without you paying silly money, which you've been able to do that with like Reds for a while, but you were paying through the nose. But yeah, generally speaking, that's much more common now where it never used to be. But yeah, so that whole super range, if you need a graphics card for editing, I mean, I use a couple of generations.
1 second, I'm gonna have to jet. I might be back. I might not. 1 second.
Okay.
The fence guys are outside.
All right. I think it's about time I went as well because I need to go and rescue this beef so it doesn't end up as a completely brown beef. But that was very appreciated. Thank you, everybody. So, Liam's had to jet. I will also jet. It's been an hour since we started our broadcast, so that seems quite appropriate. Thank you, everybody. I did never play the intro video, so I'm going to do that now as we sign off. It's been a pleasure, everybody. We're going to see you again, same time next week, 8 PM UK time on Thursday. We'll see you there, ladies and gentlemen. The whole pole position, and hopefully you'll see more videos on the channel between then and now. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.